Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. Indeed, apologies off the bat for coming in, beyond our scheduled time. So sorry about that, but we're here now. It couldn't have been helped. And we have a very important subject to talk about today. Poverty. What's the situation? It's a global phenomenon. It's known all around the world, even though we don't always talk about it. What we usually talk about is the opposite of poverty and efforts aimed at reducing it, and generally speaking about the sunnier side of life in terms of the direct opposite of poverty. But what is poverty itself? Well, you probably, might think that you have a very good idea of what it is. It might be a simple or simplistic question. But then when you want to look at it, statistically, technically, then we begin to be told that poverty goes beyond monetary poverty, which I think is what most people will associate with poverty. Now, to help us look at this and indeed prepare for a sort of a survey, a study, the results of which will be announced, in due course. I think we did this kind of thing the last time was about, as a country, we did this kind of research something like 20 years ago. But I'll be able to speak with the Statistician General of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in the person of Mr. Semiu Adeyemi Adeniran. He's scheduled to be on our program. And we also will have with us Sola Afolayan, National Coordinator, MPI. That is MPI being Multidimensional Poverty Index. Okay, do I have the Statistician General yet? Okay, as I said, we'll probably be, he'll be joining us as soon as he can. But also working in this field, let me introduce again Sola Afolayan, who is National Coordinator, MPI. Thank you very much, Sola, for coming on the program this morning. Let me say it again. Good morning, Sola Afolayan.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I appreciate coming here to speak to the public about the work that we do within the MPI.
Indeed. Now, as I've just said, we'll be hearing from the Statistician General of the Federation in the person of Mr. Semiu Adeyemi Adeniran. But in the meantime, before he comes on, in fact, I hear that he has joined us now. We have with us Mr. Semiu Adeyemi Adeniran, Statistician General of the Federation. A fine morning to you, sir. Good. Okay, there are days like this. So, Sola, I'm coming back to you. Tell me a bit about the Office of the National Coordinator Multidimensional Poverty Index. How is it situated within, the administration? Sola Afolayan.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for the honor to speak on what we have done so far in terms of addressing the issues of eradicating extreme poverty in Nigeria. And the conversation started when, the current administration came in. So beyond the campaign trail promises, the largest social investment program was set in place, and it was situated within the Office of the Vice President. And a lot of household-targeted approaches were made around the homegrown school feeding. You have the Empower, you have the JEEP program. But in spite of this, we still hear that Nigeria is the poverty capital of the world. And it's quite a shame, actually, when you hear that But then we began to investigate. So what kind of objective process was this actually based on? So we worked with those people that were called the World Data Lab that published the information, and we began to see how were this information arrived at. And of course, the National Bureau of Statistics has the official data. They conduct very robust data around poverty. So what we did within the presidency was to partner with them, of course, through NASCO. NASCO is the National Social Safety Net Coordinating Office. But of course, before we started, because it was late 2019, after implementing the NCIP work for about 4 years, so we began to look at how can we address it in a more targeted way in terms of poverty, And then so we approached the MBS. We attempted to start the conduct of that in 2020, and then the pandemic started. But I must say that this Thursday, in a couple of days' time, the president will be launching the report. I haven't gone to the field to visit 109 senatorial districts across the Federation, capturing real-time, on-time data and the experiences of the people, how they perceive poverty in all of its forms. So that has been the process, and that originated from the president being sincere to understand the dynamics of poverty, the intensity of how people, face it, and to create an enabling environment and policy directions to make sure that these are addressed.
All right, then I'll be back to you. Also, now I had thought that we'd have Mr. Semi Adeniran, but that's not to be. But we, however, do have Mr. Biyi Fafunmi. Mr. Fafunmi is a director. He's the director, Information and Communications Technology, Technical Department in the National Bureau of Statistics. Mr. Biyi Fafunmi. A fine morning to you.
Good morning. Okay. Thank you for having me here.
Indeed, indeed. My name is Afolayan. Welcome to the program. Now,
thank you.
We started talking about this, but MPI, Multidimensional Poverty Index, is a way of measuring poverty because people think of poverty and you think of a lack of money. However, apparently, it can be more than that. In fact, it is more than that, and that is probably what this MPI study is all about. Could you talk to me a bit about the dimensions of poverty, as shown in the name Multidimensional Poverty Measure or Index?
Thank you very much. As the name implies, Multidimensional Poverty Index covers different dimensions of poverty. What we are used to know is monetary measure of poverty, which deals with maybe expenditure and consumption pattern of a household or individual. But Multidimensional Poverty Index covers several dimensions of poverty because it looks in depth into the dimension of poverty through which an individual or household is passing through. Take, for example, we have dimension on health, we have dimension on education, we have dimension on living standard, and the fourth one is work and shock. So these are 4 dimensions that Multidimensional Poverty Index covers. And unlike the monetary aspect of poverty measurement, so Multidimensional Poverty Index looks at how an individual or household is deprived in any of these dimensions. So, for example, we are looking at nutrition, child mortality, access to school attendance, and sanitation, for example. So these are some of the indicators that is attached to the dimension. So, and household is now examined to see how they are disadvantaged in some of these dimensions. So if you are disadvantaged in some of these dimensions, then we regard such household or individual to be deprived, and that is what we call multidimensional poverty. That is poor in more than one dimension.
Let me stay with you for a moment. And so, because this is a statistical concept, I would be guessing. It's an exercise, a survey. And first of all, when was the last one done in Nigeria, this multi-dimensional poverty index? When was it brought up, and how is it expressed? How is it expressed, the result of it? Is it do you say a country has an index of 100 and it means something, an index of 50, or that's not the way it is measured?
Okay, it was, just to answer your question, it was last conducted in 2018.
Okay.
This is the second one in 2021.
Okay.
And the difference between this one and the 2018 is that more dimension is added to 2021.
Okay, more dimensions have been added since 2021, and you've been working on this in the National Bureau of Statistics for the past 2 years, right?
Yep.
And the last one was back in 2018. You've explained that the one that that will be imminently released, it differs in the sense that a number of other indices were added. But as at the 2018 one, is there a way that we can just grab hold of something? For instance, if it was a census, you would say, we have determined that we have 250 million people in Nigeria. I mean, is there an easy way to summarize the result of a poverty index so that one can compare with what's going on perhaps in a neighboring country or in the West?
Okay, as a National Statistics Office, the essence of our computing any indicator is for us to be able to compare it with other countries in the world. And that is why we always use the international standard best practice. And there is a fundamental principle of official statistics that we need to follow, and the methodology. So from the last computation, the MPI stood at 0.257. And we also know that in measuring poverty, that's what we call the incidence of poverty and intensity of poverty. So, and again, number of people that are poor when you are computing indicators on the poverty. So,
sorry, I beg your pardon, Mr. Fafunmi. I just want to get understanding on what you've just told us. You said this 2018 exercise, it had a poverty index, a multidimensional poverty index of 0.257. I don't know what.
No.
Go ahead, please.
What I mean is that this one, the 2021, is 0.257.
Oh, the 2021 exercise has thrown up the figure 0.257.
Exactly.
Okay. Do you happen to have at hand the figure for the 2018 exercise?
Oh, I don't have it here, but
okay.
I think,
okay. Help me to understand. What is that? What does this mean? That if a statistician, a professional, an economist, a data specialist were to hear that in for 2021, we're looking at 0.257, what does that mean? How bad is that? We're talking about poverty is why I'm saying how bad is that? What would be, what does 0.257 mean? Do you get me? I'm a layman here. I'm trying to...
Yes, I understand you, which means 26%, approximately 26% of Nigeria are multidimensionally poor. That is the meaning.
26% of Nigerians are poor in a multidimensional way.
Dimensional way, yeah.
Oh, okay. And from what you've just explained, this, since I was looking at this subject matter on the internet, and as you have just explained, you've been measuring 3 dimensions of well-being: monetary poverty, education, and basic infrastructure. I think you also added one other one. So actually, if you say
that is
just 26% of Nigerians can be said to be, poor in more than one dimension, I don't know. I didn't think that was a very, very
okay.
bad thing.
What I mean is that you look at take for example health, education, as I mentioned, then living standard, and work and shock. So if a particular household or individual is poor in health and also poor in education, so you can see that that person is poor in 2 dimensions when you are looking at the 4, and you can refer that person to be multidimensionally poor. You understand now?
Okay, yeah, because somebody who has just had the situation you've just explained to me, you said he might be poor in health and also poor in education, but he might be a millionaire. This individual could be a millionaire.
But he's still poor.
No education.
But he's still poor.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Yeah. He might be a millionaire. He might not have a school certificate to his name, but you get my trying to understand it. He might still have $5 million in the bank. I mean, sorry, he might have 5 million naira. You can't call that kind of a man poor ordinarily, monetarily, but you're explaining that it goes beyond that. It's not just monetary. Monetary is not the only way to describe poverty. You said that there are other aspects to it, and you've helped us understand it. Okay, I'll come back to you, Mr. Fafunmi. I got to go back to Sola Afolayan. I certainly didn't forget you, and I hope you didn't begin to feel like that. But I just wanted to get where we were on this. Now, we are hearing now that the result of all of this study and this exercise are about to be released, right? I wanted to ask you, how did you go about, how was the data collected? What was the sample size? Did you go all over the country, as I would expect? Tell us about how the info, the data, was gathered, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I must quickly cycle back to some of the conversations that you and Dr. Biyi had. Firstly, I must emphasize a few or highlight a few things. The MPI is both a measurement tool and also a policy tool. And aside that, just like you know and you have said quite well, the results will be published in a couple of days' time. So the result that you have been engaged on is not exactly what the results are. But we can say, just exactly as Dr. Biyi had mentioned, that we have people that have been deprived, that we have been able to capture the intensity of the deprivation across health, education, living standards. Living standards includes access to water, infrastructure, energy, and also works and shocks. And security, because we've now included, when people are, impacted by all of the security issues in Nigeria. If you don't have a stable environment, it does impact, of course, business situation and business activities. So we've captured all of those. So one, the MPI is not just a measurement tool, but it's also a policy tool. And I could have an extensive conversation on the policy usability of the MPI itself. Aside that, we cannot exactly compare the 2018 MPI with the 2021-2022 MPI that we have already. And in fact, if we were to even conduct another one today, because things have changed significantly We have the new poor, we have the urban poor that happened between the 2018 when the MPI was conducted, and it was conducted as an addition on the human capital report. It wasn't a standalone that we have now, where we went to 109 senatorial district. We have the same set of figures, dimensions, and also indicators that we will now use going forward to track, the escape from poverty or people being, going deeper into poverty. I just needed to quickly flag that out. We can go on and want to talk about, what is the headline figures, how many million Nigerians are in poverty, what is the percentage ratio, on how that was arrived at. But, the technicalities can be discussed. But in terms of asking me what is the sample size, I bet you that's a question that you would ask the statistician general. That's, I would say, not within my space to answer.
Okay, let me stay with you.
It was conducted in the 109 senatorial district.
Okay, let me stay with you.
Please.
Thank you for that last bit. That related to a part of my question, which is the sample size and methodology that we just want to know about. I, accept when you say that. Look, we got a statistician. He can tell us a bit more about that in a professional sense. But you did say that among other things that you can use, the MPI for is the matter of, is the policy. It can also be a policy study, and when it comes out, it can be a policy indicator. How would this, interface with policy formulation? In what way does it aid policy formulation?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So in terms of policy direction and formulation, what we have done after the MPI survey was concluded in February, we anticipated that before the result is released, because a lot of robustness trials was conducted on it, then we need to prepare for the use case of it. So we have what we have deployed that is called the data demand and use strategy. Within the data demand and use strategy is the policy information. So we have the national poverty map around, making sure that the statistical data is accessible to a wide stakeholders where people can interact. We have an interactive dashboard that addresses that. Beyond that, also people that are statistically oriented can go to the MBS, because we have the Poverty Policy Action Lab, that you have the dashboard that is situated in there, and also information that will be updated therein. Now, the next phase that we have done is capacity building within the state. So we have statistician generals and people that are within the Commission of Planning within state that have been trained towards in the understanding the calculation of the MPI. I must say that the MPI was developed by the methodology itself was developed by the UNDP in partnership with the University of Oxford, and specifically by the Oxford Poverty Human Initiative Department within the university. And so it has a lot of rigorosity. The methodology is called the Accurate Foster methodology. You can check that out. And it's been implemented in 100 countries in the world, and is the method that is used to track the SDG1. Now, mentioning SDG1, what we have done is how can we make sure that in all of the activities that are being implemented to address extreme poverty in all of its forms, what are the policy directions that we need to do? What are the activities? How can we use data that is evidence-based to design projects? So if we have deprivations, as you would see the results released on Thursday, if the deprivations are high in health, is high in education, how can we make sure that, one, the budget allocations are directed to address those? And I'm happy to report, the Honorable Minister of Finance, the Honorable Minister of State, Budget and Planning, had been very much involved in this process. And the Minister of State, Budget and Planning, Prince Clem Agba, had made sure that in the development of the 2023 budget, you see in the 5 priority areas, they have the highest funding within the 2023 proposed budget. you have health, you have education, you have security, and also you have social protection work that will be, will be expanded. So that's the use case of it in terms of the policy. So policy in terms of designing targeted projects that addresses what data are found. The other one is to make sure that in terms of the budget allocation of resources, we make sure that it's targeted at addressing those. I must mention at some point in 2019, after the United Nations General Assembly event, the Honorable Minister of Humanitarian had invited the OFI, the Oxford team, the technical guys to Nigeria. And we had, sought to understand not just at national but at sub-national level. And which state did we go to? We went to Kaduna State, and the governor, Governor El-Rufai, welcomed the team, and he was keen to know. So if I were to, in terms of budget process, what is the situation in southern Kaduna versus northern Kaduna? Are they more deprived in health, in education, in one of the areas, in the regions more than the other? So that can be used to inform the budget direction.
Okay.
So the policy in terms of that helps us to be aligned to the global target of the SDG. It helps in the design of a targeted project.
Okay.
And I must mention one last thing. We have the National Social Register, which is embedded within the NASCO, the Social Safety Coordinating Office. The National Social Register, you see how it quickly came to fore when we had the pandemic. And also beyond that, we are also making sure that the people that have been captured within the API that we have identified as multidimensionally poor are embedded within the National Social Register. So we have the National Social Register. During the pandemic, we noticed the new poor and the urban poor. So then the Rapid Response Register was created. Now we have the MPI data that has shown us how people are even intensely poor, or how they are poor, the kind of poverty that they face. And so the merging and alignment of the MPI results and also the NSR is ongoing at the moment. So those are just a few of the conversation we've had. And of course, we look at the behavioral architecture of the citizens themselves. How is it that when government and international development partners roll out projects that are quite beneficiary to everyone, there is lack of uptake or disbelief or mistrust? Of course, we can talk about the social contract.
Okay, I got to come in because I thought you were going to end when you said, I must also mention, and then you continued, and I saw that you're so in your subject matter that this could go on for quite a bit. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Indeed, and coming back to Dr. Biyi, Fafunmi. Sorry, Dr. Fafunmi, for referring to you as Mr. earlier until Sola referred to you as Doctor. It was what I was given. But Dr. Fafunmi, it is thought that this is a delicate kind of a study. I don't know why, when I say delicate, you could also use the word sensitive, because maybe the subject matter that we're dealing with, it's not exactly what people aspire to. Yet here you are, you have to study it and come up with what we are talking about right now, a graphic representation of the multidimensional poverty in a country, in this case, in our country. How difficult or challenging, or indeed easy, was this particular exercise? As I said, I hear that you've been working on this for the past 2 years. So how challenging has it been? Or is it really in the ordinary run-of-the-mill of statistical operations?
Okay, thank you very much. But before I answer that question, let me go back to the question that was thrown to Sola. And again, please, point of correction, I'm not doctor, I'm Mr. Biyi Fafunmi.
I'm sorry. So I took her correction without double checking it. My bad.
Yes.
Okay, so it's Biyi Fafunmi. Okay.
Biyi Fafunmi. So
Sola, I hope you heard that. Please continue.
The issue of sample size and sample design.
Yes.
So the sample was designed to be representative enough because it covers the entire 109 senatorial districts in the country. And this is also taking into consideration of all the 36 states and the FCT. So in each of these senatorial districts, 34 enumeration areas were selected per senatorial district, giving a total of 3,774 enumeration areas. And again, the sample design was in 2 stages because after do the selection at the senatorial level and the EA level, then 15 households were selected in each of the EA, making a total of 1,530 households per state. And that will give us a total of 56,610 households nationwide. So you can see that the coverage is very, very big enough, and it's one of our biggest sample size that
it is. The only problem I, as an individual, still have, though, is wrapping my mind around the 0.257 figure that you gave earlier. It's not as easy as if we're talking about census, which is another statistical kind of an exercise. You come up with a figure like 32 million. 344 million. So it's clear what that means. But I think you gave me the understanding that a figure of 0.257, for example, as the MPI for the country, I don't know how it lasts. You gave me to understand that what this means is that
you know there is a difference between the poverty index and poverty incidence. So the poverty index is 62.9%.
The poverty index is
62.9.
62.9, almost 63.
9.
Almost 63.
Almost 63. So,
that would be the MPI for Nigeria. I'm trying to understand it.
That is the incidence of poverty. So that is the incidence of poverty, which means 62%. You understand? 62.9 or 63%. So now going back to
does that mean sorry sir, does that mean that 63% of us are multidimensionally poor?
No, what we mean is that if you want to now know the number of people in Nigeria that are poor, that would be 129.47 million Nigerians that are multidimensionally poor.
Which makes up a percentage of how many of us? What is that percentage?
Yeah. So that's now 20. That is 62.9%.
Okay.
Because Nigerian population is around 200 and something million.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you understand now?
Well, you know, I'm sure by the time this is released, I'll understand it even more because it'll be presented and there'll be papers and one will be able to understand it a bit even more. But thank you very much for your efforts in trying to get me to understand it. But looking at, I asked you, you know, how sensitive or not it is, because people seem to have that notion. Is it because it's presenting unglamorous statistics? Is that why? That nobody wants to be among, you know, the statistics that are thought to be unglamorous?
Well, you know, statistics is a fact. And people are running away from fact. And that is the difference between MBS and any, we can't run away from the fact. That is the situation on ground. And it's what we receive from the household, or even if it is establishment, that we analyze and give to the country. And at times, when we release the data, some people will say, "Oh, MBS, you are doing well." To the other side, they might say that, "Oh, MBS, upon all what we are doing, you are still releasing this type of data." So it's both sides. So some see it as, yes, this is the situation. Some see it as, oh,
it is what it
little
is.
bit,
Yeah, it is what it is. You know. Okay. Coming back to you, Sola, would you let me take your comment on this aspect of it? The if you want you see. I think one of the good book says the poor we will always have with us. So throughout the history of mankind, there has also always been poverty. But you guys are now being more scientific about it. So you're now talking about a multi-dimensional poverty index. But relate to that whole matter about, you know, people, how sensitive it is. It's like when you say Nigeria is 250 million, I can say, yeah, you know, and I'm one of those. I'm one of that 250 something million. But when you bring up things like not just poverty, but the multiple dimensional aspect of poverty, and you come up with a figure, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if not too many people wanted to raise their hand and say, yeah, for this side of our country, I'm one of them. You know, so is it difficult? Do you think, is it psychologically difficult? I was.
Okay, thank you for that. So interestingly, not just the data that we captured, we also had interviews that were conducted on the field, and people were not shy to talk about the way they are deprived. You know, for the first time, we're looking at, you know, measuring, making people, even they themselves, understand that they are poor if you are deprived in, you know, for instance, within health indicator, we have a question that we ask them. What is the distance between your house and the nearest community healthcare center or hospital? And they are willing to say, because, you know, people don't want to be identified or stigmatized. But however, they are willing to say, oh, this is what it is. And so it wasn't difficult at all for people to,
I can understand,
and tell us the kind of poverty. Yeah.
Well, I can understand when you put it like that, that people weren't shy to tell you some of the answers to these basic statistical questions. How far away from, you know, a community health center are you? But because we're talking about education, well, monetary policy number one, you know, even though you guys are explaining that it goes beyond that, but you think of poverty, you think of a lack of money, but you're saying beyond that, it also could be a lack of, because we're talking about dimensions of well-being, of which money is just one, as you've explained. So you seem to be giving me to understand, Sola, that people were quite comfortable talking about whatever their truth is. You know, whatever their truth is, you know, it appears to me that it will be hard for you to understand what we're talking about, thinking about maybe embarrassment of people not wanting. No, people are actively contributing to this. I understand. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Can you hear me, Sola?
Yeah, so if, I'm not sure I did hear you, it's not so clear. But if I were just to buttress my earlier point, for instance, those that are living in riverine area that we did interview, and they've not seen electricity in the past 13 years. Even though when we asked them in terms of food and nutritious food, they did score high. But in terms of electricity, you know, so they MBS is very good at what they do in terms of being able to elicit the kind of information, to get the kind of information, and making people comfortable in sharing actual data with us. So it was they asking, you know, in the daily lives and how they do their business, how they, you know, live in their livelihoods and stuff. So they were able to take us through that process, and then were able to capture in a scientific, statistical manner.
Sure, sure. Coming back to, Mr. Biyi, Fafunmi, coming back to you, Biyi, the whole question, does it mean that when the results of your work in the past couple of years is released, I shall be able to grab hold of the document and say that, let me find out the poorest state in Nigeria, for instance, and who is the second most poor, and who is the least poor. I know that might not be your original, your most important intention of it. It's probably more for, you know, policy, developmental issues. But indeed, will that document provide that kind of information so that we could see that, well, on what World Bank and UNDP and all these people and the statisticians are calling MPI, Multidimensional Poverty Index, I can now see that state X is actually, going by these parameters, the poorest state in the country. Yeah.
Hello?
Yes. I'm
please,
done.
I didn't hear you clearly, please.
When this information is released, when this study, when this survey is released, will I be able to grab hold of that document and see from it what is the poorest state in the country in terms of, you know, the academic statistical nomenclature of multidimensional poverty index? Will I be able to see the country, I mean, the state that has the biggest case of that and the state that has the least indication of that?
Yeah, I think part of our MBS data production process is dissemination. We don't take that lightly, and that is why we have a data dissemination policy whereby we release not only the aggregated data that you can even see state by state or senatorial district by senatorial district, but we also disseminate the micro level data. And if you remember, Sola also mentioned that part of the launching on Thursday is the poverty lab in MBS, where people can access the result of this survey, and you can also do some analysis or comparison
of your own,
even in maps, so that you can look at state A versus state B and see how each of the states is faring in terms of multidimensional poverty and even other data available that's related to poverty in Nigeria.
That's going to be very, very interesting. I'm afraid we've run out of time now, but I want to thank you very much, Mr. Biyi Fafunmi, Director, Information and Communications Technology Department at the National Bureau of Statistics. When exactly, are we talking about a couple of days when you'll be releasing this study?
Yes, as the launching is on, the result will be uploaded into MBS web portal, and people can have access to it.
And that's very soon, very, very shortly. This week?
That is Thursday.
Thursday this week. Okay, then. All right. So thank you very much for making the time for us, Mr. Fafunmi. And also to thank you, Sola Afolayan, National Coordinator, MPI. Thank you very much for your insight. And if you want elucidation as well, at least getting us to understand, especially you spoke on the policy development aspect of this kind of an exercise. Thank you very much, Sola.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's our program today. Indeed, that's our program today. Please join us tomorrow for a fresh edition. I am Yori Folani. Bye-bye for now.